We are here with Attiq Malik, lawyer and activist, and we're going to ask him about Shamima Begum and her case. So Attiq, do you think the court was right to reject Shamima's appeal?
You'd think that was a simple question, but it's got a couple of different levels to it. In principle, no, I don't think it was the right decision. But unfortunately, I think the way the case was maneuvered, it ended up in a position where the court almost had no other option but to rule that way. And that's because the scope of what that court could consider was limited by a previous Supreme Court ruling. And so the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, which was dealing with this, could only consider the procedural failings, if any, of the decision made before, rather than actually visiting the case properly and having a rehearing and considering all this evidence, because a lot of the evidence that came out now wasn't around before, such as the influence of this Canadian intelligence, Secret Service, whatever he is, officer, operative, that was quite frankly involved in the collating and grooming of children to take over to ICE. I mean, it's just absolutely shocking that this could happen. And what it brings to mind for me is a conversation actually I had a couple of days ago. I was with a group of people in London. We had a meeting with a few delegates about institutional racism. And there's an inspirational lady there who was born and bred in this country. She wears a hijab. She's a full-time mother, working, a counsellor as well, very active in the community. And she was saying how both her and in the constituency, people of global majority background often feel that when being in this country, they feel like they are not really part of this country. And in response, we were being told, and in this case, we had a chief crown prosecutor there saying that, yeah, we recognize all of this. We're trying to make changes in the criminal justice system. We recognize that no one should feel like that. But yet, what justice is this? This sort of a decision, if anything, highlights that there is a two-tiered citizenship in this country. It doesn't matter if you're born and bred in this country. If you're the wrong color and of the wrong heritage, your citizenship is in question. You are not really the same citizen as those around you. There is a race divide, unfortunately. And this is what I see this ruling reinforcing. And this is what many people of global majority up and down the country will see. And it's just really sad. For the cases that we see, we often see how children from global majority backgrounds are treated like adults by the police, the way they're searched, the way they're arrested, the way they're detained. With the Prevent program, we see our children being interrogated and almost persecuted, I'll say, the way families are treated. And this is another example. This is a child that went away, and no due process has really been followed to try this person. Was there a criminal offense committed? Was there something else going on here? Yet in this country, it's only recently that the modern slavery defense has come out, where children that were used as drug mules and historically were all prosecuted, put into prison or subject to other criminal sanctions. It now emerges as a recognition that children are vulnerable and they can be groomed to be drug mules or involved in big conspiracy to supply drugs cases. It wasn't long ago in this country that people had this stereotype pushed by mainstream media and on social media of grooming gangs being comprising of Muslim men. Sajid Javid, the same person who made Shamima Begum stateless, commissioned a report. And I think that was done deliberately, hoping to legitimize that stereotypical narrative of Muslim grooming gangs. Unfortunately for him, the report said otherwise, which we who work in the criminal justice system already knew. It was just a lie, just another racist stereotype being used for political points. And I think that's a problem here, isn't it? Everything being done and what we've seen here is not necessarily for justice, which is what it should be for, which is what the courts should be for, but it seems to be all rolled up as part of a political game, a political scoring. And that's not what justice is supposed to be about. We can see the politicians doing this, and It's not right. We don't endorse it, but I suppose everyone agrees politics is a dirty game, and that's what politicians do. But surely, in the halls of justice, in the courts of justice, if justice cannot be done there, then what recourse do we as citizens have? And what recourse do we, the brown and black people of this country, have as second-class citizens? Which is basically what this ruling, I would say, would suggest.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's happened to Shamima is incredibly worrying. And the rejection of her appeal is probably pretty clear why that's happened. What do you think, or what would you say the implications of this precedent for other migrants and dual nationals?
Well, this now opens the door, doesn't it? To a door that's already open, actually, but just kicks it wide open, of making people stateless. Okay, we've had other leading commentators already comment on this quite extensively. I saw a post from Shamima Begum recently, very well put, that basically you've got a situation where even the UK has authored human rights doctrines on this that are internationally recognized. That it is wrong to make someone stateless. That's what's happened here. It's not just that the UK citizenship has been taken away. This person whose children have died in front of her left this country as a child and had no due process followed to try her for criminality or any other wrongdoing, is now left without country because Bangladesh, which is the other country that they are saying should give her citizenship, a country she wasn't born in or has any real links to apart from her ethnic origins, will not give her any citizenship. Nobody can force them to do so. As I said, she wasn't even born there. And the UK haven't. So this now takes things into a completely new sphere where the UK are going against their own human rights agreements, international agreements, that no country should do this. You know, we have, and I know I often come back to this, but it just shows you how far we are now moving away as a country from true principles of justice that have always stood in this country. So, for example, you know, this whole concept of innocent until proven guilty. This decision, I would say, says the otherwise. You're guilty until proven innocent because no due process has been followed. Yet such a serious sanction has been imposed. And we have other examples of this. I'm sure many of you have heard me before, have heard my criticisms about the PREVENT program, how that operates in a pre-crime sphere. You don't have to be a criminal, but yet you and your families can be sanctioned to so many different things because of that. We have the Schedule 7 system at airports. If you are coming through port, and of course, the majority of people that actually are subjected to this tend to be from global majority backgrounds. But if you're coming through the airport and you don't answer their question under a Schedule 7 stop, you don't provide the PIN to your phones, it's a criminal offence. And the irony of this is this. Recently, you must have all heard about the stuff going on in Met Police, right? It's all over the place. David Carrick, you got the paedophile ring going on and the chief inspector committing suicide recently, and the list just goes on and on. And I actually made this point to Met Police that it's very easy for you to put on our communities programs like PREVENT, Schedule 7, and in case Shamima Begum now, making people stateless. But what are you doing about your police? Who's policing you? And when I suggested having a program like Schedule 7 or PREVENT on their police officers, do you know what their response was? You can't do that. It's a human rights breach. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you recognize what you're doing is a human rights breach. It's not good enough for you, but it's good enough for the populace, in particular for communities such as ours. It's fine for that, isn't it?
It is such a ridiculous and head-scratching level of I don't know, racism and disgust. It's disgusting. In terms of the left and what the left can do, how we can respond, how the rest of Britain can respond, what do you think the left could be doing to respond to this sort of level racism?
If I start like this, what I think the left have always done brilliantly is raising awareness. Okay, they've done that really well, you know, in the way they mobilize people. They've got their own media channels, you know, getting people on the ground for demonstrations, all that sort of stuff. Brilliant. And there's different ways of bringing change. But one thing I've always advocated for, and the left have been quite reluctant from doing, is strategic litigation. Now, I understand the argument that we don't trust the system, look at the courts, and this Shamima Begum is a perfect example, right? You know, where's justice? But what I say is this. What the Shamima Begum case also demonstrates is one of the biggest influences on decision-making and things that happen in this country is not just political scoring, but also public opinion. Public opinion is huge. And that's why we raise awareness, right? That's why we hit the streets, don't we? To raise public awareness, get everyone outside. If we were to support and focus on strategic litigation more, not necessarily with the hope of winning and getting justice. I'm not saying that at all. Okay, I'm not saying the courts will give us justice. Yeah, you might get some wins here and there. For example, with the criminal damage, cases that went on for the protesters. You remember that, and they were acquitted. Okay, but the point is this: I'm not saying engage in strategic litigation because we're going to win, and I trust the system so much. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is this: the court for public opinion is really powerful, and sometimes even if you know a case may not have a very high chance of winning, if you bring strategic litigation, bring it into the public sphere, get the media involved, and use our grassroots activism to mobilize around it, we can get all sorts of different wins, and we can get the public on side, and we can highlight the hypocrisy in the system in terms of whether it's judicial hypocrisy or rulings hypocrisy or legal hypocrisy in terms of where the laws are drafted, or hypocrisy in terms of the policing and policing methods. But the only way we can do that is to bring it to the forefront. And one of the things that we're not doing enough of, and I think we should do and have a proper procedure and strategy for, is strategic litigation.
So sort of responding en masse is what you mean, and taking
and finding cases that expose the cracks in the system and injustice in the system. So even if it loses, we can say to everybody, look, everyone, is this right? In many ways, Shamima Begum is a good example of that. Yes, she might have not won her case, but look at how many weaknesses in the system it exposes. How does it expose the injustice and the narratives that are floating around? That in itself, indirectly, I'd say is a win.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions I have. And I think that will take us to about 10 minutes, which is probably a good length. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.